Hey everybody, welcome back to businessbits.tips, where you can get all your investment advice and tips as a business owner so you can thrive in retirement, not just survive. You can check it out on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Facebook, or YouTube, or essentially anywhere else you can play a podcast. I'd tell Alexa to play it right now, but we don't want her to pull up the show while we're currently recording one, so make sure you check it on out. Dad, I want to talk to everybody today about something that we see often in the office.
What's that?
And that is unproductive mutual funds, because people have mutual funds that they either don't understand or they're very unproductive. So I want to help business owners and people understand how they can get rid of them once and for all, because they're not always beneficial.
Well, first off, Mike, I want to talk about social media for a moment. Facebook, which I don't know much about, there's a difference, I guess, between a friend request and a friend suggestion. My wife and I your mom and I had an argument about that last night. I said, somebody requested me as a friend. She goes, that's a friend suggestion. They didn't request you. I'm like, what difference does it make? She goes, that's a big difference. I'm like, it's too confusing for me. Just pick up the phone and call and say, hello. But if I didn't use things like FaceTime, I guess I'd never see or talk to my grandkids. So you got to go with the current, menu or the current, avenue of communication. Mutual funds, it's amazing how many people don't realize the opaque fees that you can't even see on your brokerage statement. Now, you'd think with truth in advertising and under the regulators' environment that they'd require mutual fund companies to really disclose, other than in just the fine print, all of their fees, expense ratios, what we call 12B1 fees, which are pay to play, where they actually rebate or they pay a marketing allowance to the advisory firm or broker that referred the business to that fund. All of these potential fees that you can't see, and maybe even conflicts of interest, really can weigh in or drag against the mutual fund performance. That's one of the reasons Warren Buffett says be very careful about how you're paying for your investment advice. And with mutual funds, most people don't even know what they are paying. So what we try to do is get very granular and transparent. We use Morningstar and Ibbitson's as these diagnostic tools that allow us to really peel back all the layers of the onion so we can see exactly to the nickel or dime what your fees are, right? And then once we know that, we can look at the risk-adjusted return to see, are you getting value? It's kind of like if you were paying somebody for a job to remodel your kitchen, but you paid them and they didn't put in the cabinets, and the cabinet hardware is all kind of like fallen off and is not bolted down properly, so it's just kind of jiggling along there. The cabinets don't look beautifully complete. They're not a breathtaking job. You're not going to want to pay the balance due for that cabinet work for the person that did your kitchen renovation until it's right. Well, the same thing. It kind of gives us X-ray vision through Morningstar to really discover what folks are paying. And then with that knowledge is power, empowering you to see if it's a good value proposition. And if it is, wonderful, whoop, whoop, we'll celebrate that. If it's not so good or a little off center, you want to be aware of that so you can make some changes.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I don't sit in the trenches with you every day when it comes from meeting to meeting, but I have noticed that there are some people that tend to come in the office, and like you said, they're not really aware that there's even fees laden within their mutual funds. So how often is it that someone that kind of comes into this office feels like they aren't paying any fees, and then after analysis, they find out it's not really the case?
Well, it's pretty much all the time, Mike, because fees come in all different forms. And the fiduciary rule, which the Obama administration wanted, basically under Trump deregulation has not happened. The Department of Labor has basically just, Fifth Circuit Court, just kind of thrown that out. So we're kind of in the Wild West. You really have to dig down and do some of your own research. But I would say almost 100% of folks that come in really don't know what they're paying. And that's just kind of problematic. You wouldn't go and not know what you're paying for 87 octane unleaded gasoline, because if you were paying $6 a gallon, I'm sure you're not going to go to that pump. Same type of thing. Now, there's another thing. As we're recording the show, there's been what we call a yield curve inversion, which means the 2-year Treasury briefly was at about 1.654. more, which means it paid more on a 2-year Treasury note than the 10-year. That's a harbinger of recession. The last time that happened was in 2007, before the Great Recession. Now, I'm not going to be an alarmist here, but this is kind of a flashing red light that gets us to really think, with everything that's going on with tariffs and the trade war between Trump and President Xi Jinping, it really creates a situation where you want to look at your fees. You know, if we do tip into a recession, and I'm not saying we will, all right, but that's an indication of flashing red light. You want to make sure fees really matter, right? And you want to also rebalance your portfolio into safe harbors, which are non-correlated assets that should perform pretty well, even if the U.S. stock market does horribly. For instance, the U.S. Treasury, the TLT, the 20-year Treasury fund, is up 11.68% a year. That's where I put my safe money. And people say you can't make any money on treasuries. Treasuries at all-time highs, because money always has to go somewhere. So if it's going out of stock, it's probably going into gold or treasuries. It's not going into the Japanese yen or any foreign bonds, because they have negative yields. Nobody's making any money. You basically pay the Swiss bank about 1.25% a year to hold your $1 million. So a lot of things I know I'm hitting you with here, folks, but as Michael brought up fees, it just made sense because of what's in the news media, these lightning rod issues, to really galvanize and kind of pivot into some of those other important subjects as well.
Absolutely. I know you have a busy schedule. I'm sure there's people already waiting in the lobby. So before
they
we
can
get
wait.
on out of here,
they can wait. Michael thinks they can wait all day long until 6 o'clock, because on the Shiznit, they're going to wait as long as Yoda tells them to wait. And of course, Yoda is one of my nicknames for me that my team has, but we don't like to make people wait more than a couple of minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Not too much. So before we start to wrap it on up, why don't we go through one or two things that really make a good mutual fund different than a bad mutual fund? Because just like anything else, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly out there.
Sure.
What are some characteristics that a good mutual fund would have, as opposed to one that's just the ugly?
Right. Well, for instance, Vanguard's S&P 500, I call it the spider, its symbol VOO, that has an expense ratio of 0.03. So that's fractional. So it's pennies to be involved in it. And it tracks the S&P 500, which is 500 large cap American businesses in all different industries, technology, healthcare. And Warren Buffett says for most passive investors, you'd be better off just getting a good indexed fund and just leaving the money alone to grow over time. Well, that's brilliant wisdom from probably the world's greatest, if not certainly a legendary investor, Warren Buffett. So we wholeheartedly recommend that as well. But you also have to have some counterweights, as I was talking about earlier. Diversify into alternatives, not just the U.S. stock market, even if you're in a low-cost mutual fund. And those are the kind of things we can help you with through complete planning, through our retirement compass process, which is something I know you love to talk about, Mike.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're going to start to wrap on up the show and head out of here, because I'm sure you probably heard it ring. I forgot to put the phone on Do Not Disturb. We are definitely busy on in the offices. So I hope everybody learned something about unproductive mutual funds in this show today. And make sure, I'm going to let my dad lead it on out, but make sure you tune in on Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Facebook, essentially anywhere you can listen to a podcast.
Right.
You can tune on in. You could even just tell Alexa, I'm not going to say it right now, but you know how to tell Alexa what to do.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to me, Mike, that you can go to the to Echo and say, Alexa, play John Convery or Business Bits, and I'll be coming on. That's kind of got an eerie sensation to it. But I guess that's good to be. It's ubiquitous, being everywhere at all times. You know, you can't get away from us, even if you try.
Yes,
but I always love to lead us out with a paraphrase, one of my favorite paraphrases of the old Irish prayer, which is, may the wind be gently at your back, my friend. May the sun shine warmly on your face. May the misty low road rise up to meet the high road. And until our paths meet again, my friend, may God anoint you with good health, richly bless you, and have a magnificent day. Goodbye now.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the videos. If you got some more free time, I know you do, make sure you check this video out right here. And if you don't like that one, make sure you check this one out too, or just watch them both. See you guys soon.